Megan Woods.
Mr Speaker, I'm happy to take a call on this bill and continue the arguments that Labour's putting forward of why we are opposing this bill. This bill does nothing to address the barriers to work for people who are seeking work. It does nothing to address the availability of work. It does nothing to address the childcare costs, and it does nothing to address whether the person has the skills required to move into the paid workforce. What we've heard from members opposite today is a whole lot of conjecture about whether, if Mickey Savage were here today, whether he would be supporting the bill. And we've been told by those members opposite that Mickey Savage, the architect of the welfare state in New Zealand, if he were here today, he would be supporting these reforms. Well, I'm here today to remind those members opposite that if Mickey Savage were here today, he certainly would not be supporting this bill. Because when Mickey Savage put into place our welfare state, he recognised several things. He saw that we needed a safety net welfare state for people there in the time of need. He recognised that there were obligations on those receiving welfare, but what Mickey Savage realised, and what this government fails to realise, is that there is an obligation on the government and the state, and that obligation is job creation. And that is where this government is failing the young people it claims to be seeking to help with this piece of legislation. We're told by the Minister and by this government that large numbers of people on benefits are a sign that the welfare system is not working. It's the number of people on welfare, we're told. That it needs reforming because of this, and that the system is failing those on it. The government sees that the welfare system and those using it are the problem and not their own failings in job creation. And that is what we want to draw attention to today. There are now 40,000 fewer jobs since National took office, despite the numbers game that we've had tried to say about the 0.8% over several months. The very simple fact of the matter is today there are far fewer jobs available for people than when National took office. And what is more, there is no plan from the National Government to address this. In the last year's budget, we were told that 170,000 jobs were going to eventuate over the next five years. 36,000 of those jobs were to be created by March of this year. Well, as at the end of last year, we'd seen 10,000, with a deficit of 26,000, and this is no surprise, because these jobs were to materialise as if by magic. There was no plan to create them. In fact, John Key said that he didn't see it as his responsibility, as his government being able to have a great deal to do in this, that he wasn't responsible for the global economic conditions. Well, Labour firmly believes that it is the government's job, it is the government's role to create jobs for people, and it's not to resort to the kinds of things that this package we're seeing here before us today will do. This is a classic clamping down on DPB mums in an effort to show action and mask inaction in the vital area of employment and creating jobs. We've seen projections that from the regulatory impact statement that these reforms will result in 84,000 people having work obligations. This will be another 84,000 people joining the 60,000 who are already out there looking for work. This will be 84,000 people looking for jobs that are not there. To tell us how many jobs are on Seek and how many jobs there are on websites, well, the reality is for so many individuals that there are thousands of applications for jobs in supermarkets when there are only hundreds of jobs available. It is not good enough to say if you look hard enough, the jobs are there. And that is what this government and what the Prime Minister is telling people all the time burying their heads in the sand and turning a blind eye to the fact that there are tens of thousands of people in this country who want to work, who cannot work because the jobs simply are not there. We also have nothing in this package or this bill to address the issue of childcare and how it is that we're going to ask women on the DPB who are responsible for the parenting of children, how we're going to have those women back in the workforce when there is no comprehensive childcare plan to go alongside this. In fact, so little thought has been given to this. There has been musings in cabinet papers about child-minding clubs where we have unqualified people coming together and looking after what we're being told are the children of some of the most vulnerable people in our society. The thinking that needs to go alongside this to allow these women to enter the workforce simply has not been there. Instead, what we're seeing is trying to blame, playing the blame game of getting these people back into the workforce without having the adequate support and planning around how we're going to do that. The magical notion of there suddenly being all this part-time work that fits perfectly with the school day for these women to be able to go back into the workforce, we have seen no plan that this is going to be there. There needs to be thought, and that thought needs to go a little bit more deeper than floating ideas of babysitting clubs for the children that are so crucial to our future. The other vital piece of the puzzle that is missing in this bill, and one of the many reasons why Labor cannot support this legislation, is the issue of skills training. If we are going to talk about people being prepared for work, well, first of all, they need to be prepared for there to be jobs to go into, but in terms of the skills training that in here, it is not adequate. What we have seen and what my colleagues have talked about is that 48% of women and they largely are women, on the domestic purposes benefit have no formal educational qualification. And we are seeing the route that so many women who have been in this circumstance have used in terms of the training incentives allowance, that route is being closed down. And this opportunity is not available to them. We've seen changes for sole parents that saw those studying at the higher level courses, such as nursing, miss out, and these opportunities not being there for them. And this is a package that does absolutely nothing to address these issues. We see the disappearance of the youth transition funding with this legislation and this bill. This is going to be a huge problem because we do have a disconnect between getting young people into work, into education and into training. What we are seeing in terms of the solution proposed in this will do nothing to help the 83,000 young people who are in that position. What this legislation will do is actually remove some of the empowerment for these people. We are told that somehow we are teaching people better budgeting for the future by the state taking control of their spending. And we're told that these people can earn the right to manage their own payments if they continually meet their obligation and show themselves to be financially competent. Well, I'd like to ask how people get the chance to do this, because the state's going to be paying their rent. The state's going to be paying their power. Why do we not put the resources into equipping these people with skills for life, into budgeting and into learning to do this rather than leaving it? It is not good enough for us to stand here and listen in this House to members opposite, use the rhetoric of hope and of aspiration and of the great reforms to help some of the most vulnerable in society, and claim that if Mickey Savage were here, he would support it. This legislation fails the government's obligation to create jobs. And it fails the government's obligations to put in place the childcare and the skills and training needed for people to move into areas where they can have hope, where they can have aspiration and they can see a better life for themselves. But this government is doing nothing to achieve that. Thank you.
Speaker.
Mike Sabin.